right here where, we just happen to be born where the best food in the world is. What can we say?
I think that's an objective and fair assessment. That seems
just happen to be born into the one true church.
Oh, man. Hey, welcome to Beer Christianity. I'm Jonty.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Malky.
And this week we have an amazing band called Ryanhood, who are going to be talking to us about Merica and faith and what it means to be a follower of Jesus and to fight the good fight. Guys, what did you think of them?
I thought they were so lovely. Like some of the nicest guests that we've had on. Because they actually have listened to the podcast, which is more than rare. I've done.
Neither of you have listened to all the episodes of the podcast.
But absolutely delightful and just so nice. And they make me want to go visit Tucson, Arizona, because they bigged that up real good. I mean, you didn't get that on the recording, but apparently there's amazing Mexican food there. So as soon as I've got my vaccine, I'm heading straight there.
Yeah, and they were surprisingly and wonderfully Christian, in the best ways.
Yeah, because you get used to bands coming on and going not on this show, but on other ones going we're not really a Christian band. We follow Jesus, but we're not.
Yeah, and spending most of the time distancing themselves from evangelicalism, or certainly American evangelicalism.
Yeah.
And there was an element of that, but mostly just getting to the good stuff, man. And Cameron made me want to go and read Paul again, which is crazy.
Yeah, actually made me just want to read the Gospels again as well.
Yeah, man.
No, Paul.
Not Paul.
Only Paul.
No.
Paul. Fight.
Cameron was a really big fan of Drag Race.
You should listen to this episode to find out if that's true. Here you have Ryanhood. Ryanhood, welcome to Beer Christianity. If you're listening to Beer Christianity for the first time, you can find all of our stuff at beerchristianity.libsyn.com, but you can Google us, or you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Stitcher, and I believe Ghana if you're in India. Shout out to all the Indian listeners. I don't think there's a lot of them, but hey, India, write to us if you are listening. And guys, welcome to Beer Christianity. You've been telling us a little bit about what it's like in Tucson, Arizona today, but for the listeners, hotter than the sun. That's the vibe I got.
Yep. It was calculating. It's about between 37 and 38 Celsius. It's a little hotter than it should be.
Oh, I just love that Ryan's got the translated the temperatures right there a little bit, because we're white American males, and so we don't typically have to translate anything. We get things always on our terms, we want it Fahrenheit. We use our pronunciation for everything, and that's just the way it is. And I love, Ryan, you're teaching me right now. I'm learning from you.
Oh, I already had the accent translator app open as well. So in one of my earpieces, it's translating each of your accents for me.
We were genuinely concerned about whether you'd understand Malky. Although the South African accent may not be that easy, I think, as well. So that's fair. Laura, you're the only one, maybe. I don't know.
I'm the only understandable one here. That's what they've been saying for years.
That's it.
I've been training in a way for. My wife and I just finished watching a show called Ted Lasso, and
I love Ted Lasso much.
Oh, that's great to hear. I was wondering. Anyway, so that was my training. My English accent training was immersing myself in that show.
Ted Lasso may be the loveliest character I've ever seen on TV. Yeah. He is so lovely. And he is honestly my experience of Americans. I realize you guys live in America, but I have never met an American I don't like. And I've actually been to America, and still that has not been broken as a thing. And I find that you guys are nice in some ways.
I think the lesson there is the value of face-to-face, is that we need to be spending time face-to-face with each other, right? With everybody, with our neighbors, with people across the aisle, or people in different countries. Because we find the same thing when we're touring, that we're in a red state, a blue state, and we're having dinner with whoever's hosting us for dinner, and they're great people, and different backgrounds and different careers and different cultures and beliefs. But I agree with you. I'm really happy that you say that about the people you've met here, and it just makes me long for more connectivity with each other, in-person connectivity with each other.
Hell yeah!
I have the same opinion cats, where I categorically hate cats, but like every time I meet a cat, I'm like, you're special. I like you, like you're different from all the rest. Every time I actually meet one, I want to pet its little head and push its nose and, but if you ask me, I'm like, no, I totally disagree fundamentally with cats. Anyway.
I really didn't know where you were going to go with that. I was like, who would the be that Americans would assume they wouldn't like? Because in Britain, it's really easy for that to be American. I was like, I've never met somebody from ISIS I didn't like. I was like, I don't know. So I'm glad you went with cats. I think that's better. What are you guys drinking today?
All right. I thought I'd wait and crack it open on air. I don't drink alcohol, but I'm celebrating this with a Topo Chico, which is a regional mineral water from Mexico, which, again, probably most people in... Here we go. I've actually been thirsty for several minutes, but I've been waiting so I could do this on air. I figured since I don't have a beer to bring to it, I could at least bring a sound effect.
That's a great sound effect. Topo Chico. Okay, cool. That's great. We are learning stuff all the time. How about you, Cameron?
I've got a local porter. This is called Noche Dulce, and it's from Borderlands Brewery, which is a Tucson brewery, and it's called a Moonlight Vanilla Porter. That just means Noche Dulce just means sweet night, and so it's just kind of dark and just a tiny bit sweet from Mexican vanilla. And I'm a dark beer guy myself.
Nice. I'm drinking something similar. Laura, what you drinking?
I'm so impressed by this. I'm drinking cider that 10 minutes before we started recording, I pegged it down to the Huffy down the road to buy more Thatcher's cider that I'm drinking from the can. I've been completely shamed by the quality of locally made. This is lovely. I feel, oh man, I used to do better. You
could have totally styled it out, Laura, and just said Thatcher's is a small local cider press.
Oh, but the listeners would know I'm lying, and they're taking advantage.
We would not have known.
That's right.
Actually, that's true. I do have Google. I am fact checking everything along with the temperature exchanges. So,
Malky, what you drinking?
I am also off the alcohol, but I am drinking Doombar, which is an amber ale, but it's a 0%.
Oh, I didn't know
non-alcoholic beer. Yes, pretty good, man. I think Ryan and Cameron have definitely shot to the top of the. Are we ranking guests by how good
we rank them by how good looking they are, by the theological content, and by their drinks. So yeah, they're winning on all counts actually.
I mean, we've had people that have like, oh, I just found a Diet Coke, so
Yeah, you guys are definitely not in the zero effort side of the
right.
Success.
Well, we love your podcast, and we wanted to treat it with respect, so we're showing up with tasty drinks in hand.
You are very kind, and I'm not sure we deserve any respect, but that is very kind. I'm drinking an Imperial Stout by the Chiltern Brewery. If you listen to our last episode, Chiltern Brewery are the guys who have that awesome slogan, Laura, which I always
Fear God and give him the glory.
Fear God and give him the glory. Christian-run brewery, and this is the export original Imperial Stout, and it is very dark and very nice with a slight kind of sweetness to it, which is rather lovely. So, yeah. I mean, that is honestly the most eloquent I've sounded about beer ever. It's just because you guys are like drinking seriously,
I've all been shamed into being good with drinks now, and you're like really on edge. Keeping us on our toes, guys.
I know. Well, that's the weird thing is you're like, oh, it's a locally sourced cool thing, and I'm trying to do it because I want to support my community, but you end up just sounding like a judgmental liberal, holier than thou by oh, well, this is organic, locally sourced, and then the other person feels bad for the sandwich that they brought.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the dark side of trying to be
locally sourced from the newsagent down the road. So I feel like that's the same thing, really.
Absolutely. Supporting local businesses. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really am.
We only recently changed our logo, which used to say, as one of the slogans, it used to say bad beer, good vibes or something like that. We changed it to fine beer because some of the beer we drink is actually really rather nice, but some of it is just fine. It's fine. And we definitely, when we started the thing, it was like, we're not going to be a pretentious beer podcast. We're going to drink, I think we drank Coors. Coors?
For like the first 4 episodes, it was Coors Light.
That's from just north of us in Colorado.
Oh, really? Oh, that's exciting. Sorry, I should say that again. Oh, really? Now I sound like a man. There we go. oh, really? Good.
Yeah, they literally what do you call it? I don't know. Factory? Is factory? Factory's a word.
It's a manufactory.
The manufactory for Coors beer is in Golden, Colorado, and it's literally built like out over the top of a Rocky Mountain river. So they're literally harvesting like fresh, so it's like if you've ever seen those commercials with the babbling streams and all that, and they're like Rocky Mountain smooth, like it's real.
I have never seen the adverts. I do have a friend, though, who is convinced that drinking Coors is a hangover cure. It's just like basically isotonic and like, revitalizes you and all that kind of stuff. I don't know.
I mean, that sounds like alcoholism, but
he said it when he was very, very drunk. So I think that's probably fair.
I love that.
Anyway, guys, welcome to Beer Christianity. You are a band, and you are a band. That's such a weird thing to tell you. You're both like, yes.
I don't know if you know this, guys.
You guys are what we in England call a band. It's a collection of musicians. How would you describe your sound for the listeners? Because we don't want to do you dirty by describing it for you.
Maybe a high-powered folk rock duo. With so a lot of energy, and when we kind of started out, we always opted to not sit on stools on stage, but to bring a big, loud, lots of harmonies, lots of excitement to what we do. And I would say threaded through that, there's definitely a lot of deep thinking folk rock duo.
And when you say folk rock, are we talking like Fairport Convention, Peter, Paul and Mary, early Dylan? Like what are we? Because I think a lot of people say folk when they just mean acoustic guitars.
Ooh, solid.
Right. That label has gotten pretty big. It's confusing what it can mean. Some theories are that folk music perhaps has come down to maybe music where the lyrics have a purpose and a meaning deeper than perhaps exists in some pop music. Certainly, I would just say some, because some pop, I mean, the Beatles are pretty deep and amazing and world changing, and that's pop. They're pop, right? So maybe acoustic rock, I could call us, is maybe more of what the meaning of what I meant. We're really acoustic based, so generally driven by acoustic guitars and mandolins and things like that.
And in terms of the content of it, obviously a lot of folk rock has, there's a lot of traditional songs and that kind of stuff, but you guys write your own stuff. Is there a stream or a thread that runs through it that you could identify, or is it writing things about everything?
It is writing about everything. That's the goal. That's the benefit of being a, quote unquote secular band versus a Christian band, is you just can write about anything. But I think there are threads that have woven through things. A lot of introspection, a lot of how am I showing up as a person? What can I tend to? How can I tend to my own garden? How can I sweep my own side of the street? How can I put my own house in order? And that's politically, that's religiously, that's also just how you show up in relationships, whether, all those kinds of things. So singing from that perspective.
And I know this is an incredibly basic question to ask a band, but I am actually interested. Musical heroes? Musical and lyrical heroes.
You want to go first, Cameron?
Sheesh. I mean, musical heroes, just the Beatles, Pink Floyd,
Wait, before you get there. Oh, both of those actually. Pink Floyd and Fleetwood Mac, like early Pink Floyd with Sid Barrett, Peter Green Pink Floyd, because I like neither of those.
Buckingham Nicks, Buckingham Nicks, Fleetwood Mac.
Man up to man hot.
Yeah.
And for me, as far as Pink Floyd, it's really when Waters and Gilmour were both in their heyday, when they were both writing and both singing. It's there. You can find gems earlier for sure, and you can find some later gems. Like there are some great songs from after Waters left. And the guitar solos are always on point, no matter what era.
Well, but they're given a lot of space, particularly after Waters left.
That's right. There's a whole lot more guitar solos after Waters left. Good point. But certain periods of bands like that. U2 is a big one. I just I've been so inspired over the years, and I know that they've gotten so much airtime, you know, and Bono has just had his sunglassed face in front of the world for a long time, and it's easy to dismiss or dislike him, but he's helped me see things differently. He's moved me in my spirit. Like the way those bass and drums play together, like gets some kind of energy going. And then Edge comes in there with that, you know, that high kind of delay guitar. It's super moving.
I just put you two, I hadn't put you two on in a long time, and I just put them on yesterday while I was cooking. And I was just like, I feel wonderful about everything. And
what's your favorite?
Put on a mix or an album?
Yeah. What
Well, yesterday I was like, Spotify, let's hear what the This Is U2 playlist is. I just was curious. And so it was whatever their little algorithm said, This Is U2. And it was tending early on to lean towards the like, the ballad, the Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For one, With or Without You, that type of sound. Or, you know, we didn't get Hold Me, Throw Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me right at the top of that. But
probably not going to be the first choice.
Right.
But anyway, that was what was on there. Sorry to interrupt you, Cameron.
For me, it's probably the period right at the end of the Joshua Tree where you get like Rattle and Hum, and some of that. Bono's voice is the best that it ever was at that time, and then right at the beginning of the next phase, which is like when you get Achtung Baby.
I love Achtung Baby
right between
so
those two records, like that the bridge between that is just so incredible.
Yeah,
that's for me.
That's superb. Love it. Ryan, what about you? Musical?
Yeah.
Lyrical
Well,
heroes?
I mean, so many similar. Well, I second everything he said. A lot of overlap there, and I have a lot of sort of instrumentalist heroes as well. And early when I was first learning to play guitar, I was an electric guitarist, and my first kind of hero was Joe Satriani, as an electric guitarist. But my current big influences, people like Chris Thiele from Nickel Creek and Punch Brothers, and Julian Lage is an acoustic guitarist or electric and acoustic guitarist that I love, and Bela Fleck is another long influence. I like these kind of like acoustic pioneers that are. It's strange because I learn what they're playing, but I learned it on guitar. But they're already playing music that wasn't really written for their instruments anyway. You know, they're doing Radiohead on mandolin, or doing some sort of bebop solo on banjo or whatever. So I just really like the way they break new ground with those instruments. And I just think I think Bela Fleck is an incredible composer, actually. I love
Bela Fleck do some kind of Afro-pop crossover thing. I feel like
he did. Yeah, he did a project. They did a documentary called Throw Down Your Heart, where he was kind of trying to trace the origins of the banjo in Africa. And he traveled around to a bunch of different countries and made music with people there. And it's pretty great. It's a film and an album as well.
What about you three? What are your musical heroes, musical inspirations?
Laura, I couldn't possibly guess what you're going to say, so I think you should go first.
I mean, I have spent, I don't know, so much time on this podcast just singing the praises of Everything, who just kind of this indie kind of electronic band, and the singer who just has like the highest falsetto like that he sings in, and it's just like it's so good. Like I'm obsessed with everything so much. Like getting into more. I watched School of Rock the other day, and have just like been spending the last week just listening to like AC/DC and them, and just trying to be like, I need to get into these guys. I just like actually properly listen to them.
I must make you a playlist of classic rock stuff.
You must, yeah.
And I can get you into Clutch as well. That'll be fine.
Yes, we had a very good car ride the other day where we just listened to like on the way back we just listened to the Magnetic Fields like for so long, which was really great. Just like very good.
Similar to School of Rock, but not quite.
Yeah, very much the same vibe. Yeah.
And I watched Rock of Ages with my wife the other day, and what a shit show that film is. How incredibly terrible, and what a terrible range of songs they chose to represent rock music.
Isn't that got like a really random?
It is incredible cast, and it is
who's in
garbage. It's shit.
Is it Tom Cruise?
Tom Cruise, Alec Baldwin, Russell Brand.
Yes.
And it is absolutely worthless. It is genuinely terrible. They should all apologize. It's very bad. Melky, musically, what's your vibe?
So I feel like I'm all over the place, and I'm also slightly embarrassed about it because it kind of got embedded when I was like 15 with Eminem and rap music, and just like that's stuck. That's always what I come back to. Eminem, Music to Be Murdered By, a recent album which I've been listening to, and it's just, man, him particularly, the lyrics are just insane. And weirdly, like I feel like there's a crossover with folk music in terms of that storytelling, like just how much you can pack into a song. So yeah, a lot of stuff around that, and then like Dr. Dre, and then like Jay-Z and Kanye West and all that, and then also on the other side, indie rock stuff. So yeah, I was listening again to Bombay Bicycle Club recently, and the one proper Christian artist I can get into is John Foreman from Switchfoot, and he's recently he's got a new album out as well.
Yeah, just listen to that Departures.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a funny place for me because I can't really connect with a lot of the kind of worship music stuff, but that gets a hold of me somehow.
You know, they were one of the early bands. Cameron listened to them a long time ago, and I also didn't really have much Christian music that I liked listening to, and it was that second Nothing Is Sound, that album, right? That was just like, that won me over. It was they had just had their big breakthrough. They're on MTV, they're a huge band, and the next album is full of like Ecclesiastes, like everything is meaningless. Nothing, like we have everything and everything is meaningless, and this means nothing. Clearly, you know, happy is a yuppie word. Like all these they just being honest with the struggle of life, especially when it seems like they're successful. Anyway, I'm a big fan of his honesty as well.
Agreed.
They're really, really nice. Also, none of you will have experienced this, but watching Malky dance to hip hop is honestly one of the most joyful experiences. He dances like a motherfucker. He dances
I'm
so
glad I haven't seen that.
It's incredible. Isn't your wife and your song To the Window to the Wall?
Yes. Watching.
I feel like that was a significant song when you guys got together.
Yeah, I think that salvaged a date. That salvaged our second date. That apparently was going dreadfully. I thought we were having a lovely time. But then we went to the dance floor and I turned things around, apparently.
Really, it seems like your marriage is really built on To the Window to the Wall, which I think really all marriages should be built on.
I can't think of a firmer foundation than that.
No,
I mean, I can't even ingest quote any of the other lyrics.
Me musically, I was raised on the Beatles and Fleetwood Mac and Peter, Paul and Mary and Paul Simon and all that kind of stuff. And I got into David Bowie and the kind of glam stuff, and then into alternative music. So Pixies, Violent Femmes, and then goth, Sisters of Mercy and Bauhaus and industrial. And I became a Christian when I was 18, I want to say 17, 18. And a big way that was possible for me was because I discovered Christian alternative music. So Dakota Motor Co. back in the day, who were kind of surf rock stuff. And then Circle of Dust and Argyle Park, who were industrial, because industrial is my stuff. Love kind of Nine Inch Nails and Ministry and KMFDM and Cubanate and all those guys. So I got into all of that. And lately I've been listening to a combo of Carly Rae Jepsen, Clutch, the stoner rock band who went kind of full kind of like classic rock, but Clutch are just spectacular. And Amy Shark, who is my true spirit animal 14-year-old girl. Like that's just sad songs, you know, about being sad and in love, you know, that's the stuff. So yeah, that's my kind of
the last 10 artists that you named, I only know KMFDM and Carly Rae Jepsen.
I think that's a great combo, to be honest. KMFDM, I don't think I've ever heard a KMFDM song where they don't say their own name. They're like rappers for that. That's the crossover. Of
It's like DJ Khaled.
How do you know you're listening to KMFDM? They'll tell you. Yeah.
Jason Derulo, that kind of vibe.
That's great. Okay. Well, at the end of the show, we'll tell people where to find some of your music. We'll also put loads of links at beerchristianity.libsyn.com. Libsyn.beerchristianity? Yeah, okay. No, Laura's saying yes.
Libsyn.
Every time.
Episode 48, you'd think I'd know, but then also, guys, I'm wearing my Beer Christianity t-shirt.
I see it.
I had not planned that. I just picked one off the thing, honestly.
Wow. So this old thing?
You also have football jerseys now, too, don't you?
Oh, wow. You guys have actually done research. That's amazing. And nobody who's come on the podcast has even looked at the website. That's incredible.
And socks. That was my Christmas gift from John T this year.
Mine, actually. My wife gave me the socks first, and then I got them for these guys.
Oh, nice. I love it.
So, if you want...
Mine exclusively for Beer Christianity hosts. So
that's it.
That's your way in.
Gotcha. Okay.
But we were talking there about, my big passion was Christian alternative music. That was how I got into it, was Circle of Dust. Primarily, that was like, I can be a Christian and still listen to stuff that I dig. And then going from being, I will never listen to Christian music, to going to all my local Christian bookshops and with a catalog from Tooth and Nail Records and various other ones, 5 Minute Walk and all those guys, and Rex, and saying, why aren't you stocking this? And then talking to the manager about what they should stock, because this is good stuff. And playing a lot on the radio as well. So I got super into that and dragged Malky to one where do you guys know Norma Jean? They're a solid state band.
About them.
They're quite heavy. They're a hardcore band, and they're one of the heavier bands that I listen to, and listen to some fairly heavy stuff. And I remember saying to Malky, "Hey, do you want to come to a show? It's in your town." He was like, "Yeah, that's cool." And then on the afternoon of it, he was like, "Hey, I've been listening to Norma Jean on YouTube. Holy shit, am I going to be okay?" How was that gig for you, Malky?
I mean, I trust John T's taste, and I appreciate, artists at their own craft. But yeah, it took me a minute to kind of to get on board. Like, what are we? But no, John T's great at introducing, because it is what sounds like screaming. It's in fact actually screaming. Tune in. Yeah. But then you see the subtleties and you see what they're trying to do. Well, like with lots of types of music, like, reggae can sound all the same, for example, but then you tune in and you listen and you see what they're doing within that genre. It's understanding genre, isn't it?
Okay, you guys are Christians as well, and I wanted to ask you something about being Christians. Wait, I don't actually even know that. Are you Christians? Would you identify as Christians or followers of Jesus or Christian adjacent?
Yes, one of those.
Yeah. I absolutely. I love me some Jesus. Pretty. Yeah. I don't know a good way to say that without. It just has so much cultural stuff attached to it, and so many of us have been so beat up by people who say that they love Jesus, but I've just been camped out in like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John this year, just kind of reading them on repeat, and I'm just like in tears most of the time. So yeah, Jesus is my, Yep.
That's awesome.
There you go. There's an eloquent answer.
Hey, that's a great answer. I got a buddy who is in the States, but he's from South Africa originally, and he said that he tries to avoid being identified as a Christian because there is so much of a connotation of being a Trump-supporting, immigrant-hating, gay-bashing kind of thing, which I found quite hard to understand. That because obviously that's not what it means. Right. And yet there seems to be, he says, you just don't know what it's like until you live in the States. I was wondering if you guys had thoughts on that.
Well, on the one hand, I think that makes it even more important to say, yeah, I follow Jesus and I'm a Christian and I am in a church community and I, to whatever degree, like think the Bible has authority and is good, and like to do that and then marry that also with being like a good person, someone who's loving, someone who does some kind of service. Like if not, then all you have is Christian is only attached to the loudest, angriest, most judgmental people. If you don't have people who are in the center or on the left also saying, no, I'm trying to work out what it means to follow Jesus in a loving way. Like you need to have people owning it also. I don't know if it works to just sort of go totally underground, but on the other hand, I guess to just sort of shoot holes at that theory, I think the most important thing is to see it lived. It's not to hear it said. It's not what you say when you go on a podcast or what you put on your Facebook profile or anything like that, as much as it is like, is this changing you on the inside? Like, do you have any more patience with your kids because of this? Do you not like take a dig at your coworker, when they hurt you because of this? Is it actually creating change on the inside? That's far more important to me than professing. But that said, you do need solid, good people also professing faith.
I was going to say that's tough because I'm an asshole, but I'm pretty good at the words. So that's kind of what I was counting on. So that's Ryan.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear. I'm kind of curious what it's like where you are. Cause there is a real polarization. It's very politically polarized here. And, one political side does sort of try to kind of have ownership of evangelicalism and Christianity. And so there are a lot of assumptions. And I think the saddest element is, I think if somebody finds out is that you are a Christian, the assumption they're going to make here is if they are not, if this is somebody who's atheist or agnostic or any other religion, they probably are going to feel like you are probably a judgmental human being when they hear that you're a Christian. They're probably immediately going to be like, okay, how much of my life do I want them to know about? Because I don't really want to be scolded about anything, or I don't want to see any judgment in their eyes. And so that is just the worst and most unfortunate thing that possibly would be. And this may be me. I similar to you, Jonty, I became a Christian it was in college for me. And so I had a lot of time in that other side where I actually just felt judged by Christians, or I had some family members who would sometimes, I just felt like it just seemed like an angry place to be, so, and not, just wasn't modeled. And then I later met people who really kind of changed it for me, but I didn't even know that's where they were coming from. And it was sort of like I learned who they were and was like, man, these guys are great. Why is this family so great? And became close with them. And then later kind of found out that their faith was a kind of a big part of that. And that was very helpful to me. But is there not a perception like that where you are?
I feel like I wonder whether I have it. I've had it, I think, recently a few times of like kind of a similar thing, but the other way around of like not somebody assuming that I am going to be judgmental or something like that, but somebody not assuming that I'm going to be super loving or super like, I was just like a random conversation that I was having with like a group of my friends about the podcast actually, and just making jokes about wealth distribution or whatever like that. And he was like, well, I would be sure the podcast would be happy to share your wealth with you or whatever. And I was like as a joke, but also I was like, well, we are a Christian podcast, so like, yes.
In a very real
obviously yes. And just kind of like, I feel like I see that kind of side of it of somebody not, which I feel like all in a lot of ways I find almost more disheartening of like, I don't know, not that I don't know, maybe I'm not doing well enough to kind of have that, show those values of like, I am going to love you unconditionally. I am going to, serve you however I can. And it makes me sad that you don't see that part of me. And clearly I'm not, showing that well enough. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. What it kind of makes me think that what we're talking about is just like, the tree by its fruit. You would know Christianity is good based on people being good. And we all are arguing over what the different definitions of good is. In some that means has a certain sexual component, and in others it has to do with how you take care of the poor or the marginalized. We have on the right and left different ideas of good, but my guess is that we need some of both. You always need to be broadening your view of what it means to be good and to be a Jesus follower. We have a lot of like proclamation and not a lot of incarnation. You have a lot of people arguing and saying things about what they believe and saying how you should believe, but it's no longer, I guess this is what's interesting to me, is it's no longer just something that Christians do or that the church does. I mean, the church is kind of the original cancel culture. Like you say something and it's like, guess what? You're out. Like we no longer carry your albums or your books anymore. But we see that a lot more on all sides now, on the left too. Like you kind of can't say the wrong thing, or we no longer can even listen to you. We can't have any kind of fellowship with you or hear your opinion at all anymore.
So Christian, actually. Not really, truly Christian, but like...
No, it's what it is it's fundamentalist.
Yeah.
To be fundamentalist is to basically say we cannot have fellowship with you or even tolerate hearing your opinion or having your book in our bookstore or whatever. And you have a lot of people on the left who, I think in the name of trying to be tolerant and loving towards those who are marginalized, which is an absolute Christian value, also sort of can't tolerate any dissenting opinion and become intolerant and hateful and unloving, in the process. And so to me, the only way to judge between these opinions on the left or the right or the middle or wherever is what's actually resulting in love. Who's loving anybody, who's making any progress at this and what's working, and we should follow that and be willing to listen. Just because you say that you're about the marginalized, if you come across as a really hateful person, there isn't a lot of good coming off you. There's this street preacher named, I think his name is Todd White, but he has this quote I've never forgot, which is, if they don't see Jesus on you, they don't want what you have, bro. And
nice.
It just sticks with me because that's not about party politics at all. It's just saying whoever you are, like what people are really looking for is whatever that thing was that was on Jesus, that spirit of like, loving, teaching, healing, gently correcting, moving, back towards the good. And if people aren't sensing that on us, like they don't want what we have, bro.
How do we engage in a society, especially in a democracy where we have influence over how power is exercised by governments and potentially how power is exercised by corporations and the new kind of power structures? When people are being oppressed, how do we marry that love with a thirst for justice? Because I come from white South Africa, where a lot of white South Africans are like, hey man, let's forgive and forget, let's chill out. And it's super easy to say that when you're in a position of privilege and when you are not currently being disadvantaged or the subject of racism or all that kind of stuff. And I think, I mean, we have good examples of it, I guess, in MLK, but yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I do think taking a long, hard look at MLK would yield a lot of fruit. He's written extensively on it. He talked extensively on it. And, we tend to do a quote here or there, but like to really spend time there, I think would make a powerful difference. But I have this argument with my friend is named Ihab Tamimi, and he runs the Amriki's podcast, and they're essentially Arab Americans and Muslim, and they've actually had me on. But I have this ongoing conversation with him where I'm always like, "Love, bro. They need to see Jesus on you, bro." Like what I just said. I say that, and I'm like, you got to just like shine that light from your heart. It's got to come, out, and you don't got to spend a lot of time pointing fingers at your enemies. And he's like, right, man, but everything is not equal. Like I was born in Palestine, and to just be like, oh, Israel and Palestine, like they're just these equal forces going at each other. He's like, that's not the case. They're not equal forces at work here where, or to just say, well, black and white can't get along, like we just need to learn to get along. They're equal forces. There are old, entrenched, like unequal distributions of power here. And so the truth is, I'm still working on that, and I don't have a good answer. I need to learn from people like my friend Ihab Tamimi, and I don't know. I wonder if you could answer that. I'm sure you have thoughts on that, but I don't really know.
I have no real opinions, as none at all, as I'm sure you can pick up. No, I mean, I think I have to learn more in the other direction. I need to learn more about like not hating my enemies, and kind of go straight back to Jesus on that, because I think the injustice in the world for me has made me so angry that I have a lot more sympathy for revolutionary communist or even identity politics that
right.
Like I can understand. As a Christian, I can't be pro-violence. I can't see that as a Jesus follower, which means I can't be pro-military, which means I don't think you should be in the military, which means I don't think we should be going to war with nations that we don't agree with. But it also means that we can't execute the rich. We can't have a violent revolution in order to achieve justice. At least I can't be part of that. Yeah. But I would be the epitome of privilege if I pretended that it wasn't a perfectly reasonable position for some people to hold. You know, the fact that Nelson Mandela wanted to plant bombs and promoted the armed struggle is a completely understandable response to that level of violence when you've tried, like the Palestinians, again and again, the peaceful route and been repeatedly brutalized for it. I can understand why you would choose that. But like so much in the Christian life, it doesn't necessarily make pragmatic sense. You know, forgiving your enemy and loving your enemy is not a natural response. The natural response is to want to fight back. And I guess for me, I have to find a space where I'm not judging people for their natural response, but I'm also not joining in it. I don't know. Ryan, what do you think?
I don't have much to offer other than my mind is going back to just the fact that you were mentioning, people in maybe a position of privilege saying like, look, it's fine. We're all doing good now, or things are equal now. And sort of the comment that it's not. I think the most important thing is being able to try to spend time with people groups that we think we understand, but we actually, let's stop assuming that we understand them, and let's, I think we'll end up hopefully with what you started saying at the beginning, which is that you found Americans to be not like you expected, and they're friendly and happy, and or not happy, I don't know what to say, but likable. Let's say likable, human. So I feel like that's the biggest element, and that's the hardest part of that. Is that's like there's not likely to be. That's a one person at a time thing. That's everybody taking the responsibility to do that, to go begin to know somebody that you don't know, and that's, I don't know, that's probably the thing we sing about the most, as Cameron mentioned, which is targeting in some of these really large questions, going to the one thing you can control, that you do have control over, which is yourself, and doing something about that. And so in that case, I think it would be each of us or myself making sure that I'm truly going to know people that are not like me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think if the more we spend time with ourselves and know our own story and our own wounds, the more we're open to the stories of other people. When we can't tolerate our own pain or our own shame or our own fear, we're not going to be able to tolerate it in someone else, I think. And to do, I think, what Ryan is saying, which is similar, I think, to John, to what you were saying, that like to be able to tolerate listening and going, this is a reasonable position. Your anger is entirely reasonable. Your murderous rage even is reasonable. Why you feel that is reasonable. We have to ask whether it works ultimately, right? But like, I'm willing to listen. Like, tell me all of it. Tell me all the rage. Like, I can handle that. And the reason I can do that is because I've spent time facing myself, and I know my own rage. I know my own fear, and then I'm going to have room to be able to listen to that without just going, "Oh my gosh, you're a socialist," and like I can't, we can't even hear from you at all. We got to cancel you.
Yeah.
I hear that, quite clearly in your music, especially the talk of what's the line? I think it's the opening track. The inner work is the only real work, with the inner revolution, right?
The only revolution is the one within.
Yeah. And again, themes of like rebuilding and recreation, and I guess repentance in its best sense of, coming apart and rebuilding or reorientating. Yeah, it seems like that's maturity that comes, as you guys talked about in your TED talk, and that through bad things happening, that good can come and powerful change can come. And is that something that you've had to walk through in life, and like, how has your faith taken that?
I have a parent who is an addict and has been my whole life, and so there's just a fair amount. A ton of people do. That's a really common story. But I then developed. I don't want to go particularly into it, but I then developed, various forms of addiction in my life, and you try to live with that as long as you can, and then maybe you reach a point where you're like, I can't seem to beat this on my own. I don't know how. I mean, I talk essentially it's relational. That's what I talked about in the TED Talk, is that most of the ways that I tend to play out that addictive need or that addictive thinking is relational. And so realizing that didn't work, I had to walk into some of that. Why doesn't this work? What am I expecting out of this? What angers am I, and victim ideas am I nursing? What happened to me that shouldn't have happened to me? And what has happened that I'm actually the cause of? I got to take responsibility and take kind of inventory for that. And for me personally, that's a recovery process. That's a 12-step process that I'm describing essentially. And that has returned me to my faith in a much richer way than before that. My faith was just this thing that I felt like I was supposed to do. They're always like, it's not performative. It's about grace. Paul spends all his time in his letter. Like the first half of every letter that Paul writes is like, this is who you are. You are beloved. You are a holy priesthood. You're God's poem. You're God's workmanship. You're, you have everything that you need. And then the second half of the letter is, here's what to do. Here's how to live. But I only heard church ever in the opposite order. This is what it looks like to perform at a level where I'm doing all the right things and I'm holy and I'm looking the right way. And then maybe, I'll become God's poem, if I do all of that right. But something about this process, the recovery process of being like, I can't beat this on my own. And I have to acknowledge what I'm bringing to this. I mean, it's just called a moral inventory in recovery. It's just a searching and fearless moral inventory where you look at your fears and you look at your resentments and you look at your past relational conduct with other people. And you also look at your good traits, like everything good that you can find there. And you just sort of take honest stock of that. I think in doing that, it's helped me, I think, be a better Christian. And it's hard to do, though. So that's why all the metaphors, like in those songs that are in the TED Talk, are about cities burning down and houses having holes in them and everything. It's just trying to look for metaphors that describe what it feels like when things go wrong, and how, if you're willing to sit with that, if you're willing not to just blame someone else, or just do the next addictive thing or get the next person or drug or drink in there, there's so much that you can learn. And the chance then of you going back out into society, whether it's your church or politics or wherever, and being like a more helpful, more Jesus-like person, I just think you have a greater chance of doing that if you've listened and faced your own story. Because if not, you have to like put earmuffs on, and you cannot tolerate anyone's story, anyone talking about touchy-feely things, because you've never faced yours. But when Richard Rohr talks about this, he's like, look, the enemy is here. The enemy is you. Like the earlier you realize that, like, the enemy that you want to project somewhere out in the world, first of all, most of all, is here. Like it lives here. Once I know that, I don't so easily deceive myself into blaming everyone else. Now, let's get real. I still do it all the time, but not so easily, And
also, some people are bad, like as in, Nazis calling for all Jewish people to be killed. They may not be bad people, but I don't think you need to be projecting onto them to disagree. And I think that's the tension for me, is yes, you need to recognize your shadow being projected onto other people. Absolutely. And you need to take the plank out of your own eye. But we can't be paralyzed by that into not recognizing the things that must change, I guess. And maybe that's the tension of the Christian life, of both, as Richard Rohr would call it, action and contemplation. Sorry, Ryan, you unmuted and then I just started droning on and on.
I just unmuted to laugh, but I missed it. I muted too late and the laugh was over. And so all you got was my air conditioning, so then I muted it again.
It's like you unmuted to specifically show how unfunny it was by letting the crickets come through on your microphone.
Exactly. No, I don't have much to add other than I hear you, and yes, and that's that balance is the question. There absolutely are things that need to be stood up for. It's not enough just to be working on ourselves. There are people that need to be stood up for and defended, and so.
But again, that's a really easy way to justify being an asshole in the name of something good, whether you're on the left or the right. So I do recognize that. That's the thing.
And then I'm taking the opposite position here, which is basically a fault of being too like, let me just work on myself and, try to bring myself as the best citizen I can. That's a position of privilege. If there's no boot on my neck, then it's a position of privilege for me to just be like, I'm going to explore my insides entirely, through therapy and journaling. I understand that. And I'm hearing what you're saying. Like, there are things that must be stood up against. I just struggle because, I've got, like I mentioned, my friend Ehab in one ear being like, I don't know if your song, The Fight, goes quite far enough, and then I've got my dad who's very, very conservative in my other ear being like, I don't think your song, The Fight, goes quite far enough, but they mean opposite things by that like what they think, the direction it doesn't go far enough in, like it doesn't name enough names. It doesn't call out evil. But then if we get into that, they would disagree on what the evil force is. And so that's where I keep getting stumped.
Yeah.
Yeah. It must be, it's such a hard thing to like, not preach, but like the idea of necessary suffering that Richard Rohr talks about, of just like, being able to build yourself up like that. For like exactly what you're saying, like it's such from a position of privilege, it's so difficult to be like, yeah, like I agree with it. I think like, it's important to go through things to build your character and build it up. But like to say that to somebody who, has been has suffered under a systemic racism, their whole life, and just, all of that. And it's such a difficult thing to do other than, I guess, live it out. Is there any other way to do that?
I don't know. I'm really, okay. I'm really stuck here. To be honest, this is like I'm really glad you're putting your finger on this, both of you. But also it's really hard because this is where I'm most stuck. This is where I most see my own privilege, that I have the privilege to not deal with it if I don't want to, to just sort of gaze at my own belly button a little bit. I don't know. You get this idea that like in the Bible that the Jewish people were waiting for a Messiah, and they want him to come in and like overthrow Rome. Like that was the idea and he comes in, he's like on a donkey, gentle on a donkey coming into the holy city and just sort of being like, power is going to look different, and his disciples are like starting to get that by watching him. And then he totally submits and surrenders and doesn't fight back and he's murdered. He's, sexually exploited. They take off all of his clothes, and put other clothes on him and mock him and then take his clothes off again and put his old clothes back on. There's some kind of sexual exploitation going on there. There's physical torture. They hang him on a cross. They do everything to him and he dies. He's murdered, right, by the church and the state. And then he comes back and like there's this new kind of life and he breathes the Holy Spirit on him and he's like, all right, there's like this new commission. We're going to like do a brand new thing in the world. Like you're going to take this. And his followers are like, okay, all right. But is now the time that you're going to restore Israel? Like, are you going to like, this is the beginning, I think, of the book of Acts. They're like, but right. So you were just kidding before, but now we're actually overthrowing Rome, right? It's on now. And he's like, nope, the thing that's going to happen is that the Holy Spirit is going to come on you. Like, I'm doing a different kind of thing in you, and it involves the Spirit working in you,
Yeah.
Somehow that has to be married with taking oppression seriously.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And even before that, he's enraging because, he chooses tax collectors who are the ultimate collaborators. He heals the soldiers whose boots are on the neck of the people, of the ordinary people. And those are the people who he helps. And like, I don't know if I'd be okay with that. And I guess that's the genius of Christ, because that same guy who allows himself to be crucified also weaves a whip and goes into the temple and starts thrashing people and turning over tables. And you're like, crap. He defies all category.
Right.
And I guess it's that real death of self that's an ongoing thing, because it feels like every time for me, the ego wants to pivot and go, okay, all right, I was wrong about that, but I'm right about this. Let's go. And then I think every time Jesus is subversive to go, well, no, let's look at this, or this is the way instead. And it's that work. And also, what you said about the plank in our eye, I think this is the mystery. And this is, I think, where so much of my church upbringing failed me, or the evangelical church failed a little bit, is that you can only learn some things through experience, and you can only see that it was a plank when you're on the other side of it. You're a young gung-ho Calvinist or whatever. That's the one. Yeah. And you think you've got all the answers, and you don't know that until the wheels fall off and you have that crisis, or the dark night, or the stumble over the stumbling stone, or whatever it is. And then you look back and you go, oh, that was it, and now I'm free to do the activism in a clearer way, I guess.
And I guess on the other side, you also have the fact that MLK fought for civil rights, not with a gun, but made people deeply uncomfortable and did enough things to be denounced. And when slavery was outlawed, it was Christians who were making those changes happen. And they were inspired by Christ, even though he didn't, ride into Jerusalem as a traditional earthly conqueror. And and one doesn't want to idolatrize democracy either, but those things are, it is all very interesting. I'm also super aware that we asked Ryanhood to bring news stories, because I was like, I don't know, are we going to run out of things to talk about? And we have definitely not run out of things to talk about in a very serious way. So, do any of the news stories you brought have anything to shed on the people who we like to call enemies? What did you guys, very briefly, what did you guys bring or identify?
Well, I actually found that assignment a little challenging, because I was like, so many, I'm a big news reader, so I had lots of ideas, but the challenge is that I feel like getting into a discussion about it is likely to bring up rage and anger and sadness and lots of negative emotions, that I'm just like, I feel worse having talked more about this frustrating situation. And
that's cool. That's kind of what we do. So
yeah. So yeah, but one, I thought it's not necessarily connected to exactly what we were saying, but an interesting situation. And again, this is a situation of frustrating privilege, actually, because there's, this thing going on in the US where the vaccination has been rolling out, and there's a lot of, we're getting to a point where they're now finding there's vaccine hesitancy, they're having to stop rolling it out quite as fast as they were, because they're having to entice people. I mean, an interesting headline I read yesterday that I thought brought a little bit of lightness to it, even though it's kind of a frustrating situation, which is that the New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, just announced yesterday that you can get free tickets to a New York Yankees or New York Mets game if you go get vaccinated at the stadium that day. So you basically go there and get vaccinated, and then show you to your seat to watch a baseball game.
It's so
and
weird.
and it could be the Yankees. It's they're obviously that's a primo ticket.
Are they good? The Yankees? Is this a terrible
I don't know
thing?
if they're. I don't. The Yankees are the most popular baseball team in America. So,
wow. Okay.
They're sort of.
Wait, they're not the
you know.
Mets. The Mets is the one that Jon Stewart was always sad because they sucked. Is that right?
Probably.
Yeah,
probably.
the Mets are like, people love them deeply, but they just don't win that often.
Yeah,
but
yeah. New York has those two teams.
The Yankees are always winning.
And the
Christianity
Yankees,
is still a podcast about sports.
So, I know. Well, I heard your recent one about sports, and baseball doesn't have the spending caps that football does. So the Yankees spend 4 times as much as every other team, or more. Who knows? A lot more. And so they're just always. And the Red Sox are not far behind, and then the small clubs can't. But they can just. I'm pretty sure they can spend whatever they want. And so anyway, the Yankees are, yes, they're typically very good. In New Jersey, and you guys appreciate this. In New Jersey and Connecticut, they're like partnering with restaurants and brew pubs to give people a free drink if they get vaccinated that day. They can go get things like that. Anyway, I find that at least one thing I'm happy about in this announcement is that I'm not jealous in the least. I tend to sometimes I have a character defect of like wanting fairness, and in this case, I'm like, that's great. Go watch a baseball game if that's what it takes. Go have a drink. There's places that are paying people $100. There's places where they're having trouble getting younger people to do it, and so they're offering like $100 from the state to go get it. On one hand, I almost felt embarrassed to bring up this story because I don't know what the situation is like where you are, and what the opportunity even is. What. And so it can sound so frustrating. And I will say there were many of us in the US who were desperately eager to get in line for a vaccine. And so that it's just that apparently we've gotten just in recent weeks through that eager portion and are now to needing incentives like free baseball tickets.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing a lot of annoying headlines about we must encourage young people to get the vaccine, which is a bit rich, bearing in mind they've not offered the vaccine to anyone under the age of 44, who of course are very young.
Damn right, we're very young.
As patronizing as those headlines can be, if someone's going to offer me £100 to get a vaccine, I will be taking up that offer.
Totally.
I'll be happy to have a free beer for a vaccine. Sign me up.
$100 for a vaccine. I got paid $100 for winning a poetry competition. I could take it. That's fine. That's superb.
Yeah.
Have you guys been vaccinated?
Yes.
Yes, we both have.
Me too. Right. Laura and Melky, not so much.
R.I.P.
Yeah. R.I.P.
I know you guys are really on the Microsoft train now. You guys that are really all emitting 5G out of your
so much.
Cores. Yeah.
I can't even make that Bill Gates joke, having read about how he tried to block the vaccine going out to more people using intellectual property legislation. Yeah. So,
good news from today. Good news from today. That is good news that Biden is not blocking intellectual property. No, he
correct.
Waiving. I don't. Yeah,
I should know about this.
He's not enforcing it. I spent the last 4 months working on a petition for vaccine equity. I should know what the language is. But very much hoping and praying that Boris Johnson follows suit. I think leaders of France and Germany, France and Spain, have also today said that they're going to support intellectual property waivers. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, and now let's do that for all the other big drugs as well. For
no, for sure.
Insulin. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, but this is good. This is good news from the week. I'm excited about that.
How about you, Cameron? What's your news story?
Man, I just asked Ryan to come up with news stories, and then I was.
That's fine. We've actually overrun. So
I get all my news from Ryan, and then I just he feeds me all my news, and then I just sort of am silent and think about it for like 2 weeks, and try to be like, connect it in the constellation of my mind to, everything that I'm learning and that sort of thing. I'm just a slow synthesizer about things.
A beautiful codependent relationship,
I love it.
Yeah.
So I listen to a lot of 80s music. Slow synthesizers, they're all right. Also, I've drunk way too much to say synthesizers. Wait, slow synthesizers.
Yeah, you got it.
Everything's cool. Ryanhood, we are pretty much out of time. Guys, it has been such a delight to talk to you.
Such a delight.
And I am sure that the listeners will want to check out your music. So where can they find you, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, the band, it's Ryanhood, just like Robin Hood, but Ryanhood, one word. And so ryanhood.com we'll has it all. And we have a Bandcamp with the new album. And that album, actually, if you're a thinker on this podcast, we made a companion book that goes with that album that's full of expanded art, but also essays and stories behind the songs and the thought behind them. So that can be a nice kickback in your lounge chair while you're listening to the album and read that. But you can get the album on vinyl or CD or digital there. And it's on all the streaming services. And if you just look up Ryanhood on any social media platform, you'll find us. Just put it in with one word. No
You've
space.
also got a TED Talk on TEDx. What is that about, and what should people Google?
Yeah, that's, I think, what Malky was referencing earlier, that it's called How Bad Things Can Make Us Good People. And to me, the idea is just like, they don't always, like, all bad things don't always turn us into good people just by going through them. Sometimes it turns us into murderous villains. And so it's just kind of looking at what is the difference? You know, some people go through bad things and they synthesize them and become helpful members of society, and other people become some of the most destructive, blaming members of society. And I just kind of argue that it's sitting with space. It's sitting with ourselves. It's sitting with at least what we can see and learn about ourselves. And we play two Ryanhood songs that sort of fill in the holes of those ideas that connect them. So how bad things can make us good people. And you can find that on anywhere you get TED Talks.
Fantastic. Okay, each of you, what is the best Ryanhood song to start off with if people have never listened to you? Number one song that they should, like, if they're going straight to Spotify and they're like, all right, what song are they going to pick that you reckon they should listen to first?
What do you think, Cameron? Do you think Second City?
I think Second City or The Fight, maybe. One of those two.
Fantastic. Right. Okay, so check out Ryanhood, Second City, or The Fight. You can find them on all the major platforms, Bandcamp. I know I found you on Spotify. Spotify is terrible for paying artists, though, so maybe listen to them on Bandcamp. I don't know. What is better for you guys?
Well, you can either listen to us on repeat for 3 months straight, or you can buy our album on Bandcamp, and it will be equal either way.
Okay. So ideally buy them on Bandcamp. I think that's probably the dream. And check out, The Fight or Second City. Thank you so much, Ryan and Cameron. That's really cool of you for coming on this. And more power to you guys. I hope that your message gets out there more.
Thank you. Huge privilege to get to share this time with you guys. Thanks for doing this with us.
You guys, it's been a joy.
Kind.
Yeah. Any final words you want to say to the listeners?
Wow.
That is something you should have said in an email before. You need to have a final word.
I'll be honest, you are crediting us with way more professionalism and planning than we have.
A reason I didn't say these, I'm looking at Cameron is the I'm more the musical brainchild of our band, and he is the lyrical sage of our band. So I figure I'd give him the parting words.
Oh man.
You got to make it good.
Yeah. No pressure.
Hey, how about this?
You're representing all words.
Let me do the lyric from The Fight. Take right, take left, take blue, take red, take heart, take head, take sharks, take jets, take the comment section from the last election, take the things we write, take our misdirection, take the fear that makes us want to drive them out and makes us act the same as what we're mad about. Take the Inquisition, think of prohibition, think of shock and awe against Sharia law. Take crusades and hate and mobs and frenzies, crews and cliques, the crucifixion, ethnic cleansing. And it isn't only all about the pain and hurt, but also that it never really seems to work. Because the heavier the hand that holds and squeezes, the more you break the thing into a million pieces, and every little spore is going to grow again. You could call that hell or you could call that sin. But the only revolution is the one within. Until we throw ourselves into the light, we will never win the fight.